So good afternoon to one and all. So we are discussing about the different. We are discussing about different physiological systems of the human body. Physiological systems of the human body. So under that we are covered about the cardiovascular system. Cardiovascular system, which relates the structure of the human heart and how the blood will be pumped from heart to lungs and lungs to heart and again to the different parts of the body. So there we can observe atria and ventricles, and from there the due to due to the four valves are present in the four chambers of the heart, the blood will be pumped to different parts of the body. Okay. Similarly, we have another important physiological system of the human body, that is the respiratory system. The respiratory system. So this is the respiratory system is the is nothing but it's like a pneumatic system. So because here it will be operates based upon the exhale air. Okay, so by exhale and inhale of the air, so it will be absorbs the oxygen and releases the CO2. So here the medium is air. Okay, that's why it is like we can consider it as a pneumatic system. Okay, pneumatic system in which the air pump. So generally the diaphragm will be present at below of these lungs. Okay, due to the operation of that air pump or diaphragm, so there is a creation of the pressures, positive pressure and negative pressures will be developed in the chambers. So here there is a word that is a thoracic cavity. So thoracic cavity is a our bone like structure. Okay, so below that this respiratory system, that is lungs and the heart will be situated. Hello. Okay, and due to this variations of the negative and positive pressures of the due to this negative and positive pressures of the chambers, okay, there is a transfer of the air. Okay, so by inhale we will takes the air, and by exhale we will release the air. Okay, by inhale we will absorbs the oxygen, and by exhale we will release the CO2. Okay, so in this process of inhale and exhale process, so there is a there is interchange of these oxygen and CO2. Okay, so how the structure of the respiration system we'll see, and how this oxygenated blood will be deoxygenated blood will be converted into oxygenated blood. Okay, so generally the lungs are connected to the outside environment through a passageway comprising nasal cavities, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. Okay, so these are the main uh, parts of the lung system or respiratory system. So from the atmospheric air will be passes through the nasal cavities, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. Okay, so here larynx is called as voice box. So from the this larynx we will get the voice. Okay, so similarly we have trachea. Trachea is a windpipe. So from the from the mouth so to the lungs there is a windpipe is there. So that is considered as a trachea. So this figure shows This figure shows the respiration system main parts. So this is the nose and this is the nostril opening. Okay, and from there the air will be sends to the, this is the trachea windpipe. So the air will be sends to the two lungs. Okay, so here the trachea will be divided into small sub parts, or you can say a it is like a pipe. Okay, so through that the pipelines will be subdivided. Okay, and those are called as two subdivisions. That is those are called as bronchi. Okay, so this is the one and two. Okay, and from this again they will be divided into small diameter sized pipelines. Okay, and those are called as bronchioles. Those are called as bronchioles. Okay, so again each bronchioles will be again divides. Okay, and each bronchial again will be divides, and those are called as alveoli. Alveoli. Okay, so here the alveoli is a branch from bronchial where exchange occurs. Where exchange occurs. It means, so from the heart, right atrium to right ventricle, and from there the blood will be sent to lungs. Okay, and where that lungs they purifies this deoxygenated blood into oxygenated blood. Okay, so that blood will be comes to this lung system. Okay, here in this lungs the oxygen will be absorbed. Oxygen will be absorbed, and deoxygenated blood, I mean the CO2 will be released. Okay, so there is a alveoli is there. Okay, so this alveoli is the main part. So there is a exchange of these two gases. Oxygen will be absorbed and CO2 will be released. The released CO2 will be again sent back to the this particular process of the respiration system. Okay, so while inhale we will receive the oxygen. Okay, this oxygen will be exchanged with the blood which is pumped from the heart. Okay, there the CO2 will be exchanges with the oxygen. Okay, and oxygen absorbed blood will be sent to again heart, and the exchanged CO2 will be sent to the outside by this nostril. Okay, nostril passes. So like this there is a exchange of the gases will be occurs at alveoli. Okay, so we will see in the next I think it is fourth unit. So we will see in detail observation how it will be uh, absorbs the oxygen and releases CO2. Okay, so these are the main parts of the uh, respiratory system. Okay, so the air passes where bifurcates to carry air into each of the lungs, wherein it is again subdivides several times to carry air into the out of each of the many tiny air spaces that those are called as alveoli. Okay, so from this the air will be pumped to the two bronchs. Okay, so from this again the these passes air passes will be subdivides into bronchioles. Okay, and from the bronchioles they will be exchanges the gases. I mean here the two gases, that is CO2 and oxygen, will both will be exchanges with the blood. So in the tiny air spaces of the lungs is a membrane interface with the hydraulic system of the body through which certain gases can diffuse. So oxygen is taken into blood from the incoming air, and carbon dioxide is transferred from the blood to the air under the control of the pneumatic pump. So using this respiratory system or lungs, the oxygen from the blood will be the oxygen from the air will be received by the blood, and the CO2 will be transferred to the outside. Okay, that is to the this lungs. So that is pneumatic pump. Here this um, lungs are considered as a pneumatic pump, whereas heart will be considered as an hydraulic pump. Hydraulic pump. Thus, the blood circulation from the link in the supply of the oxygen to the tissues and in the removal of gaseous waste products of the metabolism will be happens. The movement of gases between blood and the alveolar air is basically due to the constant molecular movement or diffusion from points of higher pressure to points of lower pressure. So how this movement of gases will be happens? So gases between blood and the alveolar air is basically the constant molecular movements. So molecular movement or the diffusion. Okay. So due to these two conditions, there is a exchange of the gases will be occurs from the blood to this respiratory system. Okay. So generally for the respiratory system, the following um, variables are important for measuring. So how we can identify the lungs of the system or respiratory system are functioning properly, how we can decide. So for that, what are different measurements we have to do the measurements. Suppose in a corona patient, so how we can able to find out the how the lungs are or how much the lungs are affected. So how we can decide? Okay, so how effectively the lungs are functioning. Okay, so that will be done by measuring different parameters. So the first one is respiratory rate. So based upon this respiratory rate, so whether that patient is able to respiration of the air is how much it is taking. Okay. Similarly, respiratory airflow, respiratory volume, and concentration of CO2 in the expired air. So based upon these parameters, or by measuring this respiratory rate, respiratory airflow, and respiratory volume, and concentration of CO2 in the expired air. So based upon all these four parameters, we can observe or we can say that the ability of the lungs. Okay, and system also requires some measurements for certain volumes and capacities. So in the lungs system, we have to observe so how much volume it is able to respiratory. Okay, so there are different volumes and capacities are there. So that is the tidal volume, vital capacity, residual volume, inspiratory reserve volume, and expiratory reserve volume. Okay, so based upon these volumes and capacities of the lungs, so we can observe that the functionality or efficiency of the this respiratory system. Okay, lungs, or how we can also say that how much it is affected with some viruses like that. Okay, so like this we can observe the different parts of the respiratory system. Similarly, another important physiological system of the human body is the nervous system. So cardiovascular system, respiratory system, and nervous system. So the nervous system is the control and communication network for the body. So in our body also we have communication and control systems. Okay, so how we can able to uh, how we can able to move the hands, how we can how we can walk, okay, how we can observe, okay, how we can see, okay, all this, everything. So there is a control and communication network is there from the brain to other parts of the body, okay, and and there is the coordinates of these functions of various organs. So in our body we have number of organs are there, so different parts of the body, all these organs will be coordinated with this nervous system. So control and communication network, using this control and communication network. So rapid communication between the various parts, the effective integrated activity of different organs and tissues, and coordinated contraction of muscle are almost entirely dependent upon the nervous system. So rapid communication between the various parts, okay, so the effective integrated activity of different organs and tissues and coordinated contraction of muscle are also entirely, all the functionality of the human body, entire human body, it depends upon the nervous system. So whatever may be, so the work or the movement of all the parts, the function of the every organ, okay, all depends upon the nervous system. So it is the most highly developed and complex system in the body. So this nervous system is highly developed and complex system in the body. The center of all these activities is the brain, that is a central information processor with memory. It's all of you know that the brain is having memory and computational power, decision making capability, and host of input output channels. So it can receive the signals, like the processor, for the processor we have to give the some input, and after that processing it will produces the output. So like that it takes the input from the sensors and applies to the signal to the output channels, okay. So our hand is a, it is a motor nerves, okay. So suppose our eye is the sensor, so based upon that input from the eyes, okay, the eyes will be senses uh, some part, or it will be gives some signal. So depending upon that our hand will be operated, okay. So like that the input is the sensor, that is eyes, and the output is our movement of the leg or hand, okay. So like this the movement of the each and every part of the our body, which relates with the brain, okay. So in this brain we have central information processor, that is it is having also memory, having computational power and decision making capabilities, all these are having in the brain, okay. So it is highly, it is uh, highly effectively efficient processor, okay. So generally the nervous system consists of a central part and peripheral part, central part and peripheral part, that is central nervous system, okay, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of encephalon, that is brain, and spinal cord, okay. So the nervous system is a combination of central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is made up of encephalon. Encephalon is nothing but the brain and the spinal cord. So the combination of the brain and spinal cord is called as the central nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves and groups of neurons outside the brain and spinal cord. So outside this brain and spinal cord will consider the nerves which are present out of the brain and spinal cord is considered as peripheral nervous system, okay. So generally the brain consists of three parts: the cerebrum, I think all of you know this, cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brain stem. So brain consists of three parts: cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brain stem, okay. So this figure shows the main parts of the brain, that is we can call it as encephalon, encephalon, So this is the cerebrum, cerebellum, and brain stem. So this is the cutway of the human brain. So it is the cutway of the human brain. So here there are two hemispheres. There are two hemispheres. The first one is cerebrum. Okay, the cerebrum consists of two well demarcated hemispheres. Okay, right hemisphere and left hemisphere, and each hemisphere is subdivided into two lobes. Here, the cerebrum is the main part of the brain, and that cerebrum is again divided into two hemispheres, and right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Right hemisphere is again divided into, each hemisphere is divided into two parts, two lobes. Those are called as lobes: frontal lobe and temporal lobe in the left hemisphere, and parietal lobe and occipital lobes in the right hemisphere. So if you observe this cutway of the human brain, so on the right side we have parietal lobe and occipital lobe. On the left side we have frontal lobe and temporal. Frontal lobe and temporal lobe. Okay, on the left hemisphere. So the outer layer of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. This is the cerebral cortex. So this is the cerebral cortex is the very important in our brain. Okay. So this is the cutway. So half of the brain we have to consider. Okay. So this cerebral cortex is in between the both the hemispheres. So okay, the outer layer of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. The all sensory inputs from various parts of the body eventually reach the cortex. Okay, so where certain regions relate specifically to certain modalities of sensory information. So this cerebral cortex. Okay, so this is the cerebral cortex. So in this is the left side of the brain, and this is the right side of the brain. So here we have two lobes, parietal lobe and occipital lobe on the right side. On the left side we have frontal lobe and temporal lobe. So for every action and every here, this is the cerebral cortex. This is the cerebral cortex. It is the in between the two hemispheres. Okay, so the left side of the brain, is corresponds to the motor action. So it is the actions corresponds to like movement of the legs, trunk, arms, okay, hand, thumb, face, mouth, and throat. So each part of this cortex, cerebral cortex, will be corresponds to each action of the our body. Similarly, on the right side of this cerebral cortex, so there is a different positions. Okay, so leg, trunk, arm. Okay, here also. So based upon this sensory information, so there will be acts. So like this hearing, vision, and on the left side, it is the more responsible for the higher intellectual functions. So for the um, more thinking power, the thinking power relates to the left side of the brain. Okay, and sensory purposes, that is hearing and vision. Okay, so that information will be uh, observed by this right side of the brain. Okay, according to that, it will be acts. It will provide the signals to different parts of the body. So the outer layer of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. The all sensory inputs from the various parts of the body eventually reach the cortex. Okay. So different parts of the body sensors, we have all the 5 sensors, and from that all 5 sensors, the signals will be reaches this cortex, where certain regions relate specifically to the certain modalities of sensor information. Particular part of this cortex is relates to particular sensor information. Okay, so that particular point of cortex relates to certain uh, sensors information. Okay, so like this, various areas are responsible for hearing, sight, touch, and control of the voluntary muscles of the body. Okay. So in this cortex, okay, so cerebral cortex, so certain areas are responsible for hearing, sight, touch, and control of the voluntary muscles of the body. The cerebral cortex is also the center of the intellectual functions. So main, the left side of the brain. Okay, the frontal lobes are essential for intelligence, constructive imagination, and thought. Okay, the left side of the brain is essential for the intelligence, constructive imagination, and thought. Here, a large quantities of information can be stored temporarily and correlated, thus making a basis for the higher mental functions. So it can be stores the uh, store the information temporarily. Okay, and it is correlated and making basis for the higher mental functions. Okay, this is the left side of, this is the main responsible for the higher intelligence intellectual functions. And the next part of the brain is the cerebellum. The cerebellum acts as a physiological microcomputer which intercepts various sensory and motor nerves to smooth out the muscle motions. Okay, so which could be otherwise jerky. Okay, so cerebellum is acts as a physiological microcomputer. So which will resist the inputs from sensors, various sensors, and produces the outputs for the nerves motor nerves. So by applying these signals, there is a smooth functionality of the muscle motions will be occurs. If there is a loss of this information to these muscles, okay, so there is a variations will be occurs. Suppose we have to move, so that will be signal will be produced from this cerebellum, okay, and from that it will produce the signal smoothly, that makes the movement of that particular part will be smoothly changes. If it is not given these signals, there is a jerky, it will produce jerky motions. So it also consists of 2 hemispheres. So cerebellum also consists of 2 hemispheres, which regulate the coordination of muscular movements elicited by the cerebrum. The cerebellum enables a person to maintain his balance. So for balancing of the person is mainly based upon this cerebellum operation of this cerebellum. Okay, cerebellum enables a person to maintain his balance. So the next one is brain stem. Okay, so in the brain stem, and which connects the spinal cord to the center of the brain, just below the cerebral cortex. So the brain stem which connects the from spinal cord to the center of the brain. Okay, so the essential parts of the brain stem are medulla oblongata. So this is the main part, so which is the lowest section of the brain stem, and it contains the centers for regulating the work performed by the heart. So that is the vasomotor centers, which control blood distribution, and respiratory center, which controls the ventilation of the lungs. So there are two centers are there. It contains the medulla oblongata is the lowest section of the brainstem, lowest section. Okay, and it contains the two centers. Okay, so that is vasomotor centers. So it is used for the control of the blood distribution, and the respiratory system center, which is controls the ventilation of the lungs. So it means from this vasomotor centers, they will be sends the signals to the heart. Based upon receiving these signals, the heart will be contracts and relaxes. Similarly, for the operation of this lungs also, so there is a respiratory center. From that, it will sends the control signals for the operation of the lungs. Okay, and the second part of the brainstem is the pons, PONS, pons. See here. So this is the medulla oblongata. This is the medulla oblongata. These are the pons. Okay, pons, and this is the cerebellum, and this is the stem of the brain stem. This is the brain stem. Okay, so the very lowest part of the brain stem is the medulla oblongata, and above that we have pons. So the what are the use of these pons? We'll see. Pons are located just above the medulla and protruding somewhat in front of the brain stem. Okay, midbrain, so which lies in the upper part of the brain stem. Midbrain, which lies in the upper part of the brain stem, and another one is the diencephalon. Diencephalon is located above and slightly forward of the midbrain. It has one part that is called as thalamus. Diencephalon consists of a part that is called as thalamus, which acts as a relay station for sensory pathways to the cortical sensory system of the cerebrum. So it will act as a relay station. Suppose from our body at a time it will be sense the number of signals from the ear. It will sense the signal from the eyes. It will sense the signal, and from skin it will sense the signals continuously. Okay, so it will be have some the brain should be sense which signal should be sensed. So that's why there is a relay station is there. So that relay station will be considered as a thalamus. So this relay station will be connects each of the signals to the brain. Okay, so how we can connect with each signal? Okay, so that will be considered as a relay station. Okay, so at a time it will be connects to each signal, or it will be connects to every all the signals. So that will be decided by this relay station. Okay, and in the lower part of the diencephalon is a hypothalamus, which has several vital centers of the temperature regulation, metabolism, and fluid regulation. So this hypothalamus is the responsible for the temperature regulation, metabolism, and fluid regulation. So they include the centers of the appetite, thirst, sleep, and sexual drive. Okay, and the hypothalamus is important for subjective feelings and emotions. So like this we have hypothalamus, thalamus, and hypothalamus. Okay, so these two are present in the diencephalon. So like this each one has so different functionalities. Okay, so hypothalamus is responsible for the control of the temperature, okay, metabolism and fluid regulations, and they include centers of the appetite, thirst, sleep, and sexual drive. Okay, hypothalamus is important for subjective feelings and emotions. So like this we have the different parts of the nervous system. So basically for brain. Okay. So with this I am concluding the today's class. So in today's class we will discuss about the respiratory system and the nervous system. So from the respiratory system, we will the pump the I will or we will send the air to the respiratory system, that is lungs, and there the oxygen will be absorbed by the blood, and the CO2 will be exchanges, and CO2 will be exhaled. Okay, and the air will be sent through different parts of the lungs. Okay, and there is one thing I want to explain for the respiratory system. So here we have, see here. So here there is a from here we'll take the air, and here from the mouth we'll take the food. Okay. So in sometimes the food may be, the food will be travels, should be to the digestive system. Okay. The food what will take that should be travel through the esophagus. Okay, the food should be traveled through the esophagus, and it will be sent to the digestive system. Okay, and the air will be also sent to this. This is a epiglottis. So this is a, here there is a wall will be there. There is a wall will be there. So this wall will be closes. This wall will be closes when we take the food, when we swallows the food. Okay, so that food will be sent to the esophagus tube. Okay, esophagus tube, that esophagus tube will be connects to the digestive system. Okay, digestive system. Okay, so here this epiglottis wall will be closes when we swallow the food. Okay, so like this suppose somebody says that, so we will get some, while taking the food, you don't take fast. Okay, you have to take very slowly, I mean, so so it does not enter into the this respiratory system. Okay, so don't be hurry while taking the food. Okay, so like this there is a one epiglottis wall will be there, that wall will be closes this path of the air path, this that closes the air passes path while we swallows the food. Okay, and that swallowed food will be, when this wall will be closes,